Hello and welcome to Flory Models Kit View Time. Today we've got Revell's latest release. This is the 1/72 Shackleton. This is the MR.3 version. Now, just to bring you completely up to speed with it, this is the slightly earlier version. So down in here we've got the actual MR2 and we've got now the new MR3. Basically it's a slight retool and upgrade to the actual MR2 kit. We have reviewed this one. I will link it down below as always on this one. So really the biggest difference between the two is tricycle landing gear. So actually the newer version has a nose wheel and obviously main gear, whereas obviously the older version, the Mark II, had the more traditional sort of, World War II era of actually having a tail wheel and up. So obviously greater visibility. There's lots of upgrades this thing's actually had as well. Obviously got the tip tanks, giving it greater range. The biggest difference, I think, if you speak to anybody who's ever flown in one of these things, was soundproofing. The Mark III had far greater crew comfort, shall we say, with actually better seats, soundproofing, and overall facilities on board and things like that. So anyway, let's get the old one out of the way. As we can see on the old box art, pretty much standard, very similar to the other ones we saw there. And as I said, this is basically a small upgrade, new parts on there. We knew it was coming. We could tell from the way it was modular fit and things like that before. But a quick run round on the box, we can see we've got the usual blump down on there. Okay, kit number for this particular one is, where's kit number? 03873. You've got your measurements down there as well, 209 parts, 39 centimetres by 50 centimetres on the old wingspan. It is of course 72nd scale, and then on the back we got some quite nice information about it. There's that all new front end with the new tail wheel system, things like that right the way through. So this is sealed. I just grab a knife. We do our usual run through the box. Again, I know I did say that I would be building this one, and it's one of those kits that sits here in my stash, and I just haven't ever got round to doing it. It's as simple as that, but it is definitely one of those ones I want to do. So as always, we'll start in the instructions. So Revell's new style of instructions as always. We've got some decals down there as well. Let's move those out of the way. Okay, so quick thumb through. As I said, we've sort of done this one before, so you can do the other one. Obviously, the newer parts coming out with this one, the main difference being this area here, so it's actually got the tip tanks onto it, the all new front end in it. There's a couple of different engine things as well, I think, on this particular one, and then the more standard parts. Usual things we saw before right the way through, so very nice detailed flight deck. You've got lots of sort of different bulkheads and various fittings on this one to give it rigidity and strength as a model, but also great for detail as well. That beautiful Bombay we saw before, we'll have a closer look at that when we look at the plastic. Nice to see as well, we've got a spar system, so that's going to aid with alignment of wings and obviously fitting of wings and things like that as well. One of the areas, as I said before, it'll be a little bit taking your time to make sure it's right, is to actually get the seam between the actual main fuselage and the newer front, or obviously depending on which one you're doing, the older front, onto that one as well. But it's nice to see it's done at this stage and put in like this, rather than doing it at the more classic stage of having a front end and rear end system. So hopefully you'll get a far nicer fit on that one. Clear parts being put in now, like we said before. Yeah, option, you can do that afterwards if you want to. Door open or closed, and then obviously the various flight decks and then everything being fitted down in between as always, and then literally sandwiching it all together. Glasswork going on for the main cockpit area and on the actual spine, and then obviously all the control surfaces, and as before they are posable as well, so you can actually have them in pretty much any position you like. And then looking at the parts, as you can see right the way through, tip tanks we spoke about before, and obviously aerials and things being fitted on. You're probably going to put them on a little bit later. And then, as I said before, those gorgeous wing spar system, just to give you a far nicer, good, strong and angles joined to the actual fuselage. Okay, then we got obviously cowl flaps open or closed as well on the actual engine system, and then obviously building the engines, which are probably the most noticeable thing about the Shackleton, having those contra-rotating engines. Okay, so then right the way through, gear, main gear, doors, usual thing, nose gear being put in there, and then obviously you can do it in flight if you wanted to and have them closed up. And then you've got options for having the guns on the front or without, depending on the versions you're doing. We've got the radome system down there behind the actual Bombay system being fitted in there, and again Bombay open or closed right the way through. Another nice tip with this particular kit is the actual way you can have the flaps deployed or up. Okay, and there's those contour rotating props, which make a Shackleton at the end of the day, being fitted in. And as you can imagine, being a reconnaissance and maritime type aircraft, lots of aerials right the way over it. Markings, things like that, as I said, we've actually got a phase 2 version. They did 3 phases of the Shackleton in MR.3 format right the way through. This is a phase 2 from 1965, okay, right the way on this one. So this is one from Kinloss with 206 Squadron with a really nice orange tip tanks on this one. Okay, and then obviously we've got the other ones down in here. So we got which is this one down, my local one down in Cornwall. So phase 3 for 42 Squadron 1970 without the orange sort of tip tanks on this one right the way through. And again, beautiful markings as you can see on there. Not a million decals all over it, so you're not going to be lost doing too many of those, thank God. Okay, decals. To be honest with you, Revell's really improved their decals over the years, but unfortunately they still suffer with this carrier film. They always make it really, really flat, which is something Airfix used to be guilty of as well, which can be a little bit problematic to try and get a nice match between your paintwork, especially if you're using more of the newer paints like your sort of lacquers and things like that. They tend to be a lot more glossy satin finish, so you've got flat decals going on to satin, and then you've got to try and overcoat it, yeah, as we know. But anyway, walkway details, everything else looks to be very, very nice. It's not the sharpest, you know, it's pretty difficult to read some of these ones even in 72nd, but the rest of them are right the way through on that one, as you can see on there. So no problems with those. Now into the plastic. So this is technically your newer Sprue system in here, which has got the newer parts in. The rest of them are pretty much traditional, and as you can see, we've got the difference with the engines. We've got a few small little changes on this one, but the noticeable difference will be the front end. So separate bagged-ish. We have got a few running around, but at least it's not in one giant bag. Okay, so what we're doing is whip this out. Okay, so there we have it. So really nice detail. Again, you've got this kit of two halves, as I always say, is that the sprue gates are huge, they're massive, it's Revell, it's what they do. You always get this little bit of flash running around with them, all the usual bits. Luckily though, the improvements over the years have been that the parts themselves are pretty much flash free, shall we say, for the greater part, and certainly sink marks aren't as numerous as they used to be perhaps, so that's actually a very nice touch. One of these things about this kit I absolutely love was that internal detail, and again following through exactly the same beautiful internals down in here, as we can see with the actual bomb bay itself right the way through. Beautiful work in there, and then again just looking at it, and then hopefully on the close-ups, as you can see, we've actually got all that riveting detail on this one. Now it is recessed rivets, it's not raised, but at the end of the day I think that's actually a good trade-off, because trying to put raised rivets back on is a lot harder than putting recessed. So from my point of view I can live with that, of having it technically not correct, but from a modelling point of view I think it's more pleasing on the eye and easier to work with. Again, beautiful work on the actual engines. We've got the actual control surfaces, and then the all new tip tanks, things like that, and bulkheads right the way through. No real internal detail onto this one, as we can see down in here for the cockpit, because obviously we've got a full deck in there, but down in here you can probably see we do have a very nice bomb bay doors with internals, and luckily for us we've got no actual ejector pins in those, which is again is something where Revell seems to be really getting their act together with the lacking of ejector pins as it used to be all over it, right the way through down to actually in these areas where it doesn't really matter. You've got one or two, but they're very shallow, they're not as deep and as heavy as they used to be, so that's a very nice touch. Again, a smaller sprue down in here with these smaller parts on there. You can probably catch them in the light. There we go. You can actually see lots of detail on that, which is absolutely fantastic, with the all new sort of nose wheel system and the aerials and things like that down on there. Again, there is tiny ejector pins in these, but they are so shallow and so well done you can hardly see them, which is actually a very nice touch. There is one just down in the middle there, but that is very faint. Almost didn't touch it to get it out of the mould, which is a really nice touch. And of course the all new radome on the bottom with the newer gun platform at the front if you're going to be doing it open or closed with the gun system, and there's that all important radome for the bottom and another aerial just there. And the main kit itself, just to go through, you can see giant bag, don't like giant bags. There we go, so we'll just get in here. Okay, so As we saw before, obviously the highlight of the kit is this surface detail. It is absolutely beautifully done. Very, very nicely done. See, we have got a tiny little bit of flash running along this front edge, but now I'm starting to get really picky with the kit itself. Apart from that, no problem at all. I wouldn't call it stress skin on this one, but because there's so many sort of riveting on this, it gives that slight illusion of it, which again is a very nice touch and something that we're falling into that sort of scale issue. But generally, when you look at the smaller details, like down in here, if we catch it in the light, you can see the actual level of detail that's gone into this kit, even in a 72nd. Beautifully, beautifully done right the way through. Actual engines again, onto this one for the mains, and then again lots of aerials and flaps and various things. Nothing on the inside as you can imagine. Okay, we've got some dates down in here, got the original bits down there from 2015. Okay, we have got some surface detail down in here as you can see for the insides of the actual flap areas, and again we haven't got any ejector pins in those, which is a really nice touch. And again that gorgeous area. Unfortunately we have got a small sink mark running, and if I can catch it, right the way along here from that flap. We're saying they're getting better with them. Unfortunately we found one, and we've got one here. It's very fine, you can probably just see it running along here, but actually I think by the time you get some paint and weathering in there, you're not really going to notice it. I don't think it's a deal breaker, but it's a shame that it's there. Again, a little bit of flash here and there, but really not a problem. Flight deck, everything else like that, very nicely done. Instrument panels, got the moulded in rudder pedals with it, and all the areas you'd imagine. That big wing spar system, just to help with your alignment and make things a little bit easier with the build. Fuselage, and the actual wing sections, control surfaces down the back end as well. Those all important twin Lancaster rests, twin tails. Again, it's a shame because when you rub it, you're almost expecting it to have raised details, being as it would have been, also known as a million rivets flying in close formation. It doesn't have it. So yeah, tactile wise, it's not quite there. But again, from a modelling point of view, I'd far rather put on recessed rivets with a wheel than I would raised rivets with, I don't know, Archer or someone else like that, okay? But you can see, beautifully done right the way through on this one in there. If you haven't seen the review before, and little highlights on this one, if you've got the door open, you have got opposite it some of the actual rib work and formal work down there as well, which is a nice touch with that one, but generally no problem at all with all of those. Then we're down, as I say, we've got some various parts in here. So we've got the wheels, get these out of the bag, okay, stuck to it, okay. So down in here, again, some of these you won't be using, some you will, but we've obviously got the main gears, engines, the various parts as you imagine down in here. Nice detail on the wheel hubs. They're not weight on wheels, which is a bit of a shame, but I think that's absolutely fine. Again, nice touch. No ejector pins in the actual wheel wells. Unfortunately, there is a few in the surface detail on here, but let's face it, no one's going to see in there anyway. Okay, we've got a couple of other smaller parts down in here. I do believe that's one of the guns on the parts. Okay, and then down in here, the props. Actually, good shape on the actual tips of the props, no problem with that. Again, a little bit of thing where you've got the sprue gates down onto these, but that's not so much of a problem. Intakes, radiators, things like that down on here. Some of the seats, some of the actual spinners, things like that on there. Exhausts, pretty good. Okay. Well then, we've got a match pair. We won't even bother getting this one out because it is literally just a match pair as the other two. Alright, again, there is slight differences between the engines. They had an engine upgrade with the MR.3 to the MR.2. That's why some of those are slightly different. Okay, and then get in here, clear parts. Again, we're watching bits that fall out just in case. Usual thing, it's got a little bit of movement. It did have last time. You can probably see how wobbly that is just down on here. Again, it's a funny old system on this one because it's all clear on the sides, giving great visibility for the actual crew. Unfortunately, it's not the clearest clear part. It's a complex mould trying to get in there. The front ones are absolutely no problem at all. It's just the side ones here are a little bit wayward, all right? But again, it's a big clear part. It's a little bit odd the way it's done. It doesn't work exactly brilliantly, shall we say, but I think it's acceptable because of the scale. And then down in here we actually got the side windows obviously running down behind the crew side, and then obviously the nose, the various other parts of the clear, and the tail. All of those, they're not brilliant again, but I think you could probably get away with it just about in 72nd. It's just they're all a little bit, considering they're just flat, they're a little bit sort of wayward, shall we say. They're a little bit wobbly when you look through them, which is a little bit of a shame, really. And there you have it. To be honest with you, I'm a bit biased because I do like the Shackleton. The Shackleton is one of those classic aircraft that I think, you know, slipped through history. You know, it's a 1950s aircraft. I think the Mark III came around about 55, 56 time. And then obviously it's replaced by the Nimrod. So it was one of those sort of stopgap-ish aircraft that went through history that I think gets overlooked. I've been lucky enough to get up and personal to quite a few of them now over the years at various museums and things like that. And they never fail to impress. So as a model, it's going to be just as impressive. Yes, it has got recessed riveting. It would be nice for it to be raised, but actually I would rather do it recessed than raised any day of the week. I think it's really nice now that we've actually got a Mark III with a tricycle gear. Thank God now we can get rid of the old frog kit from back in the day and put that literally out to grass now for the kit collectors rather than having to build one.